Have you ever wondered if life after 70 is supposed to feel smaller or simply different? What if you don't need more money, more possessions, or another big achievement to feel genuinely happy at this stage of life? And what if the things you spent decades chasing aren't actually the things that bring the most peace anymore? Maybe you've already noticed that your priorities are changing. A quiet morning can feel better than a crowded room. A meaningful conversation can matter more than an expensive purchase. And having the freedom to wake up without constantly worrying about what other people think can feel like a luxury all by itself. But there's something else many people don't realize until they get older. A peaceful life after 70 doesn't usually come from adding more things to it. It often comes from protecting a few things that truly matter. And today, we're going to talk about 5 of them. The first one may sound simple, but losing it can make even a comfortable life feel surprisingly empty. And no, it isn't money. The first thing you need after 70 is not a bigger bank account or a busier calendar. It's someone you can truly connect with. And that doesn't necessarily mean having a huge family or a house full of people. It could be one close friend you can call when you have something on your mind. It could be a brother, sister, adult child, neighbor, or someone you've known for years. What matters is having at least one person with whom you don't have to pretend that everything is fine. Someone you can laugh with, talk honestly with, or even sit quietly beside without feeling uncomfortable. Because as we get older, our social circles can naturally become smaller. People move away. Careers end. Children become busy with their own families, and some friendships simply fade with time. And suddenly, a person can have a comfortable home, enough money, and plenty of things to do, and still feel deeply alone. But here's the part I want you to think about. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. You can spend an entire afternoon by yourself and feel completely peaceful, and you can sit in a crowded room and feel like nobody really knows you. That's why after 70, the goal isn't necessarily to have more people around you. It's to have more meaningful connection with the people who matter. And if you've been feeling that your world has become a little quieter lately, don't assume that means your best years of connection are behind you. Sometimes, one honest conversation, one regular phone call, or one simple invitation for coffee can begin changing that. But connection is only the first piece of the puzzle. Because even when you have people you love around you, there's another question that becomes incredibly important after 70. What gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning? And once you have someone you can truly share life with, another question naturally begins to appear. What are you sharing your days for? Because having people you love around you is wonderful. But even the strongest relationships can't fill every morning with meaning. After 70, you may no longer have a job demanding that you wake up at a certain hour. Your children may have their own busy lives. The responsibilities that once filled your calendar may have slowly disappeared. And at first, that freedom can feel wonderful. But after a while, too much empty time can start to feel less like freedom and more like a question you don't know how to answer. What am I supposed to do today? That's why the second thing worth protecting is not a particular activity or hobby. It's having something that gives your day a reason to begin. Maybe it's tending to a garden you've cared for years. Maybe it's taking your morning walk, preparing breakfast for someone you love, volunteering at your local community, learning something you've always been curious about, looking after a pet, or simply being the person your family knows they can count on. Your purpose doesn't have to impress anyone. It doesn't need a title, a paycheck, or a big achievement attached to it. Sometimes purpose is surprisingly ordinary. It's having something that makes you think, I'm needed here. And that feeling can change the way you experience an otherwise quiet day. But here's where this gets deeper. Once you know who you want to share your life with and what you want to spend your days doing, you may begin noticing something else. There are things from your past that still take up space in your mind, even though they no longer have any place in your future. Old arguments, decisions you wish you'd made differently, mistakes you still replay, people who hurt you, opportunities that came and went. And that brings us to the next question. What are you still carrying that you don't actually need anymore? And once you start thinking about the things you're carrying from the past, you may realize something surprising. Not everything that happened to you needs to come with you into the years ahead. Maybe there's a mistake you still wish you could undo. Maybe someone said something to you years ago that you never forgot. Maybe you spent a long time worrying about what you should have done differently, or comparing your life to the life you thought you were supposed to have. But here's the difficult truth. You can spend the next 10 years trying to change yesterday, and yesterday still won't move. Letting go doesn't mean saying that what happened didn't matter. It means deciding that it doesn't get to control every tomorrow you still have. You can acknowledge the disappointment without living inside it. You can forgive someone without inviting them back into your life. You can accept that some opportunities are gone while still being grateful for the opportunities that remain. And sometimes, peace begins with something as simple as saying, "That chapter is over. I don't have to keep rereading it." Because after 70, your time and emotional energy are valuable. You don't have to spend them proving that you were right, impressing people who don't matter, or punishing yourself for choices you made with the knowledge you had at the time. But letting go doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up the things that matter. Quite the opposite. Once you stop spending so much energy carrying what you cannot change, you have more energy to protect something you absolutely can influence, your ability to live your own life. And that brings us to a question that becomes more important with every passing year. What abilities do you need to protect so you can keep making your own choices? And once you stop carrying everything from the past, something interesting can happen. You have more energy to protect the life you still want to live. Because independence isn't about proving that you never need anyone. It's about keeping as much choice as possible in your own hands. Can you get up from your chair without struggling? Can you walk to the store, climb the stairs, prepare a meal, get into your car, or take a trip without constantly wondering whether your body will keep up? These everyday abilities may seem ordinary when you have them, but you understand their value very differently when they begin to disappear. That's why staying physically active, taking care of your strength and balance, eating well, getting enough sleep, keeping up with appropriate medical care, and paying attention to changes in your health can all become ways of protecting your independence. And asking for help when you need it doesn't make you less independent either. Sometimes the smartest way to stay independent is to accept a little support before a small problem becomes a much bigger one. Because independence isn't about doing absolutely everything alone. It's about having enough ability, confidence, and support to keep making meaningful choices about your own life. And yet, there's one final piece that can be even harder to protect than your physical independence. You can take care of your body, stay connected to people you love, and have meaningful things to do, but if you're constantly judging yourself for the life you didn't live, peace can still remain just out of reach. So after everything you've experienced, can you finally learn to be at peace with the person you became? And maybe this is the part that takes the longest to learn. After everything you've lived through, can you finally give yourself permission to be at peace with the person you've become? Because you may have spent much of your life trying to become someone else, a better parent, a more successful professional, a stronger provider, a person with a bigger house, more money, more achievements, or fewer mistakes. And perhaps some of those dreams came true, while others didn't. Maybe your life turned out differently than you imagined when you were younger. But that doesn't mean it turned out wrong. You don't need to become the person you once imagined you'd be. You can learn to appreciate the person you've actually become. You've survived difficult seasons. You've made decisions with the information you had at the time. You've loved people, lost people, changed, learned, made mistakes, and kept going. There may still be things you wish had happened differently, and that's okay. Peace doesn't require you to pretend that everything was perfect. It simply means you no longer have to spend every day fighting with the parts of your story you cannot rewrite. And perhaps that's one of the quiet gifts of getting older. You begin to understand that happiness isn't always about getting more. Sometimes it's about appreciating what remains. The people who still care about you. The mornings you still get to wake up and experience. The ability to take a walk, share a meal, laugh with someone you love, sit in your favorite chair, or simply enjoy a quiet afternoon without needing to prove anything to anyone. After 70, you don't have to win the race you were running at 30. You can finally step back and ask a different question. Is the life I have today meaningful to me? And if the answer isn't perfect, that's okay. You can still change small things. You can still make new memories. You can still call someone you've been meaning to call. You can still learn something new. You can still take better care of yourself. But most of all, you can stop believing that your worth depends on everything you failed to accomplish. Your life is not only the things you achieved, it is also the people you loved, the difficulties you survived, the lessons you learned, and the person you became along the way. And when you can accept that, something beautiful happens. You stop needing life to look different before you allow yourself to enjoy the life that's already here. So, does life after 70 have to become smaller? No, it can become quieter. It can become simpler. It can become more intentional, and it can still be deeply meaningful. Maybe you don't need a crowded calendar anymore. Maybe you don't need to impress anyone. Maybe you don't need to keep chasing everything you once thought you needed. What you may need is someone you can truly connect with, something that gives your day meaning, the courage to let go of what you cannot change, the ability to protect as much of your independence as possible, and peace with the person you've become. That's it. Not a perfect life, not a life without problems, just a life built around the things that matter most to you now. After 70, you don't need to prove how much you can accomplish. You get to decide what is worth your time, your energy, and your heart. And if you're fortunate enough to have another morning ahead of you, that's not simply another day to get through. It's another opportunity to call someone you love, do something meaningful, release something you've been carrying, take care of yourself, and appreciate the life that's already in front of you. If this message meant something to you, share in the comments. What is one thing you want to protect or appreciate more in this stage of your life? And if you want more thoughtful, practical videos about living a healthier and more meaningful life after 60, consider subscribing.